Welcome to Clarity Practice Management. My name's Frank Steitley. I'm the CEO of Clarity Practice Management. I'm also the managing partner of a CPA firm, Steitley and Carstetter CPAs, located in Chantilly, Virginia. About a dozen years ago, I got together with a client of the firm, Peter Daniel, who was a software developer. We started putting together what is now Clarity Practice Management about a dozen years ago, and we've been using it in the CPA firm and developing it since then. Today, I'll be walking you through the day in the life of a Clarity user. I won't be showing you everything in Clarity. That would take a few hours, but I want to give you a good idea of the capabilities of our software. I'm going to have you on mute today until we get to the end, and then I'll open up for questions. Also, if you have questions as you go ahead and put them in the questions pane. That way I'll pick them up from there as we go, and if we're at the spot where I can answer that question, we'll do that. I'm not going to kill you with a PowerPoint today, but I do want to show you a few slides that show you what Clarity does from a big picture standpoint. First of all, what Clarity does is it helps your accounting and tax practice engage with clients, as well as improve your staff productivity, and helps you to leverage your business and grow. We've created a seamless workflow that's centered around clients. I think we are the only people in the industry who are really client-centric to the bone. We incorporate clients into your workflow. We help you reduce phone calls, meetings, and emails. And I'll show you how the dollars on that work in a minute. And we have dashboards where you can both manage the company and also manage staff, as well as staff can manage themselves. To give you a little bit idea what Clarity will do for you, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. In your firm, you have a partner or partners, and you have some admin staff and maybe some preparers. Clarity is a workflow engine that sits in the middle between everyone within your firm. We have a secure place for documents, but in addition, Clarity also interfaces with your clients and brings your clients directly into the Clarity workflow, and you can communicate with clients directly on the site without email or phone calls. I'm going to show you in a little bit. The first thing I'm going to demonstrate will actually be what I call a contactless tax return. In addition, if you bring on extra staff during tax season, you can bring them on really easily. We have a staff in our CPA firm of about 15 part-time preparers who are literally all around the world at this point. And finally, here are some of the features that we have in Clarity. I'll be showing you probably most of these features as we go. And here's a little bit about how the dollars work if you switch over to a remote practice management or to a remote office model. Let's say you have a CPA firm or an accounting firm of 10 full-time staff with 2,000 clients, and your average billing rate is $175 per hour. If on average you make 2 phone calls per year per client and 0.75 meetings, and you spend 15 minutes on a phone call on average and 3/4 of an hour on a meeting in average, you're spending somewhere around 2,100 hours in emails and phone calls. If we can reduce the time spent in emails and phone calls by 50% at that billing rate of $175 per hour, we can save you at least $186,000. And I can tell you in our practice that the time reduction is far greater than 50%. In the last dozen years, my practice is at least 3 times the size that it was. And I have fewer meetings than I had with a practice that was 1/3 the size back in about a dozen years ago. If you are a very small firm, the math still works, even if you just have 1 full-time person, just you. If you look down at the bottom, you can see the 50% reduction in time spent on phone calls and meetings can save you somewhere in the range of $28,000. And that may not seem like a ton of money, but I can tell you in the state of Virginia, that's tuition, room, and board at a Virginia State college. So it pays for something, that's for certain. Okay, with that out of the way, let's go deeper. I want to go directly into the demo, talk about how to win tax season with Clarity Practice Management. So I am going to go into Edge browser, which is one of the browsers we support. We support all the major browsers: Chrome, Edge, Safari. Also Explorer will still work with it. Right now, we're recommending either Edge or Chrome as the two best platforms to use. What I want to do first is go through what I call a contactless tax return, and that's sort of going to the end of the story, and then we'll come back and I'll do a little more traditional demo from the top. First of all, we have a tax return here, 2019 tax return, and the client is Daddy and Mommy Shark. I'm certain you've heard that annoying song if you have kids or grandkids. What I'm going to show you now is beginning to end of what a contactless tax return looks like. And it starts out with Daddy Shark, the client, posting files for us directly on Clarity. You can see we have some files here. Daddy Shark on his end, and your clients will log into Clarity on their end. Daddy Shark posts his tax return files. When he does that, everybody who's on this project, and we have 4 potential positions on the project, gets a notification on their Clarity dashboard, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a little bit. Also, if I go over to the public notes section, you can see that Daddy Shark, and this is my personal email, my Daddy Shark email, leaves me a note saying, I just posted my files, let me know if you have any questions. So the next step in this is that I contact an admin person in our firm, Kathy Dietz, and I type in, please D&P. D&P is code for us, meaning download and process. So Kathy takes the files off of the site, smashes them into a PDF, runs them through our scan and populate program, and it sucks the data into the tax return. Now, we're using a program called AutoFlow, which is a CCH product that then pulls it into CCH Access. So once Kathy has done that, she then notifies Michelle, who's the preparer on this tax return, that it's ready to be prepared. Michelle then compiles a list of questions and missing items and lets me know that the questions and missing items are ready to send. So over on the Q&A tab, if I open up the questions list, you can see that she had some pretty standard questions: engagement letter, miscellaneous income, major changes, foreign bank account, all of that stuff. I review the questions and then I send them to Daddy Shark. Daddy Shark gets an email notification that there are questions there and to log in. He also gets a notification on his Clarity dashboard. Daddy Shark, as you can see, then answers the questions. And when he hits the submit button, everybody who's on this project gets a notification that the questions have been answered. Then Michelle picks it up as the preparer. Down here in the notes, she completes the return and she notifies the reviewer, Christy Krause. This one's ready for review. Christy then reviews the return and posts review notes. So if I scroll up again and I go to the review notes tab, and I think you can see everything with this project is all in one place. These are the review notes. You can classify the review notes however you would like to classify them. These are the ones we're using. Michelle then corrects the review notes and sends it over to me, where I then do a final review and post a draft for Daddy Shark. I post the draft here on the files from our firm. You can see we have a draft return posted down here. It's deleted now because it's been finalized. But when I post that draft return, Daddy Shark gets a notification. And then he has the opportunity to either approve or disapprove the draft. If he disapproves the draft, he can then give us a reason. In this case, Daddy Shark approves the draft, and I can see that because I get a notification that it's approved right here. Daddy Shark also leaves me a pithy little note asking if I'm a communist or if I work for the IRS. And then my favorite excuse, I can't owe that much. I don't have that much. So I then put it on, I then send it back to admin to be finalized. So as you can see up here, this is how we break down the final return for clients. Kathy then posts instructions. These instructions are part of a note template, so she doesn't have to type that out 2,000 times during tax season. And then she can edit that template for anything she wants to say specifically to Daddy Shark. Daddy Shark then gets the 8879 form and uploads them and leaves me another pithy message. The 8879 forms are over here from Files from Client. You can see it says signed 8879 forms for you IRS lackeys. At that point, we're ready to file the return. So the return gets filed. And when the return has been filed and completed, I leave a little note for Daddy Shark that the tax returns have been accepted by the IRS. So that beginning to end is a contactless tax return. There were no phone calls, there were no emails, there were no meetings for this tax return. And in our CPA firm this year, about 85% of our tax returns went exactly this way. And the whole pandemic thing upped that percentage by about 10%. Last year, we were about 75%. This year, we convinced a few more people, about 10% of our practice, that it was really neat to get their tax returns done from the comfort of their home, sitting on their couch watching TV. I will go back through these screens in a little more detail in a few minutes, but I want to show you just first the workflow steps or where these handoffs occurred between staff members. And I will go through all of these tabs and fields in just a little bit. So that's the contactless tax return. Next, I'm going to go back to the beginning a bit and start at the My Dashboard section. You can see that Clarity, Practice Management, and Navigation all happens down the left Explore tree. We have two different dashboards. The first one is My Dashboard. Every user in your firm will have a dashboard at Clarity Practice Management. It's a great place for them to start out each day and figure out just how to organize their workday, what's happened on the site, and what they should be working on next. You can see we have two charts here. We have a donut chart and a pie chart. The donut chart is projects by status for this particular staff member, or me in this case. For instance, you can see I am on 18 projects where we're waiting on answers. There are 16 returns where we're waiting on 8879 forms, where there are 11 returns that are in review, 34 being finalized, 17 that are done. We're really just waiting on the IRS acknowledgement, and we have 65 where I am on 65 returns in progress. Projects by type. Project types are a very important concept in Clarity. They are things like personal tax returns, business valuations, S-Corp returns. They could be payroll tax returns. They can be weekly payroll. They can be bookkeeping engagements. Anything that you deliver to a client can be a project in Clarity Practice Management. And this particular pie chart has a listing of all the projects by type. For instance, there are 96 personal tax projects that I am on, 12 partnerships, 12 S-Corps, and 12 others. So this gives you an idea. These are also more than just pretty charts. You can drill into them and get a listing of all the projects that make those up. Over on the right side, we have some recent project updates. These are some things that have moved along in the process. My active projects in the middle. This particular person, or me in this case, is on 161 projects right now. I am in charge of almost 1,100 clients. I am on 397 tasks right now. And right now I have 0 notifications. I'll talk about notifications in just a minute. If I scroll down a little, we have a section for workflow tasks. The first section is overdue tasks. These are all of the tasks on projects that are past their due date, and I'll show you in a little bit where those due dates come from. We have upcoming tasks. These are tasks that have not yet reached their due date, but they will shortly. I think you can see this is a great place for staff to come to find out what they should be working on. And completed tasks, we have some recently completed tasks. Over to the right, we have new notifications. And like a dummy, I cleared out all my notifications about an hour ago because I had quite a few of them. But you get a notification anytime a client does something on a project that you're on in Clarity Practice Management. And everyone on those projects, on a project, gets those notifications. For instance, if a client posts files, you get a notification in this section. If a client leaves a note, there's a notification in this section. If a client approves or disapproves a draft, there's a notification in this section. It is also possible for staff members to send internal notifications here to other staff members on a project. So if they want to call attention to something specifically, they can notify a specific staff member. And I will show you that in a few minutes. So let's go to the corporate dashboard next. The corporate dashboard is only available to people with management access, so staff members cannot see this, I think for maybe obvious reasons. We have the same two charts again. The donut chart this time, though, is for projects for the entire firm, and the projects by type is for the entire firm. Over at the right, invoice status, you can post invoices to Clarity. It's simple as drag and drop, and your clients can pay the invoices directly on the Clarity site if you accept credit cards. If I scroll down a little bit, you can see the firm has 590 active projects, about 2,600 active clients, and we have 32 internal users in the system right now. If I look at staff members' workload, you see I have staff members listed on the left. You can see a little chart with the overdue tasks, and again, you can drill into that. We actually have an admin user who is a pooled user. This is shared by a number of people in our admin staff so that we can notify admin that we want something done, and whoever's available to do it out of our admin pool will pick it up and do it. We don't have to notify a specific person. My favorite column in this section is the workload hours. These are all of the committed hours out into the future for each staff member. And I'll show you where this rolls up from when we get to projects. The usefulness of this is when you're in the third week in March and somebody gets sick and you have to reassign all of that person's tax returns, you can come in here and see what the workloads are of everyone in your system. And you can see who the least overloaded person is the third week in March. So that's the corporate dashboard. And again, only people with management access can see that. What I'd like to do next is show you how quick and easy it is to set up a project in Clarity Practice Management. But I'm going to start out by going to a client screen first. So I'm going to get rid of this screen that I had up. And I'm going to click on clients, and I'm going to look up my Shark Daddy client. This is a screen where you can look up clients by basically any little piece of information you know. I'm going to talk about tags in a little bit, maybe to give you an example of how this works before I go into my Daddy Shark client. I will go to all the projects where I am the in-charge person, click on search, or all the clients where I'm the in-charge person. Click on search and you can see I'm in charge of, this is the same number, thankfully, that we had over on the corporate dashboard of the number of clients I'm in charge of. So now I'm going to call up my Daddy Shark client. And I will open up Daddy Shark in another window. Information in Clarity Practice Management is organized by folder tabs, meaning that all of these folder tabs apply to this one client, Daddy Shark. The first one's client info. You can see this has name and address information. We have contact info. We have phone numbers over here. You can create your own phone labels, and you can have as many phone labels as you would like to have. Down at the bottom, we have two sections for notes. I think you saw this already when we were looking at that tax return earlier. Public notes are notes that clients as well as internal staff members can see. Internal notes are notes that just staff members can see. If I want to send a note to a client, I just type the note in and hit send, and the client gets a notification on his or her end as well as an email. If I have a note that I do a lot of times and don't want to retype it, I can make it part of our notes template, where I can just pick from our pre-stored notes. I can then make whatever changes I want. I then hit send note, and the same thing happens as if I had typed the note out. If I want to send a note to another staff member, I go over to the internal notes. First, I save the note, and then I notify the staff member or members that I would like to have see this on their dashboard. So I type in a few, oops, got to type in the spell right. First couple letters, and it matches with Christy, and I will notify her. She will now get a notification on her dashboard. User accounts. User accounts are how you give access to your clients. Clients will log in once you give them access by hitting create new user. They will log in using their email address. You can have more than one email address access a client. In addition, one email address can access more than one client. As an example, you might have a business owner with a corporate and a personal account in Clarity. On the corporate account, you might have the owner and the controller have access. On the personal account, you may have the owner and the spouse. So the spouse can't see the corporate side, and the controller can't see the personal side. This also works really well in divorce situations. It's easy to parcel out access to just the people you want to see it. Next, I will go over to tags. Tags are ways of grouping clients, and you can send mass emails to particular tags, or you can export the data out into Excel format and use something like Constant Contact or SurveyMonkey. But you can do that directly within Clarity if you choose. Tags are entirely user customizable. The way the tags work is you pick the one you want to assign, hit the right arrow, and now it becomes part of the tag. The tags for this client, if you want to remove it, click the left arrow. We use tags pretty extensively in the CPA firm, particularly as we were getting all these changing tax deadlines, and we were getting changes to PPP regulations, it seemed like every Friday. We would send out e-blasts to our clients, and we would decide which e-blast any individual client got based on these tags. Jurisdiction due dates. Clarity will track jurisdiction due dates for you. You get to build the due date table. I don't know where everybody is from, but in Virginia, we have these silly personal property tax returns that are specific to counties, and they might actually have different deadlines depending on the county. As well as we have Maryland personal property tax, DC personal property tax, and so forth. Typically, you wouldn't have this many due dates for a particular individual, but I use this as my test account, so you can see there are a whole bunch of them. So that's pretty much what's in a client record. What I want to show you next is how to create a project in about 10 seconds using a template. Now to do that, I'll start out by scrolling down to our project summary screen. And in this project summary screen, you can see we have a number of tabs. We have one active project for this client. That's the one we were on at the very beginning. And we have not started projects. We have completed projects. These are things like completed tax returns or financial statements. One of the nice things about Clarity is if you have a client sitting at a mortgage broker's office Saturday at 1 p.m. and while you're at the pool, they can access their completed tax returns any place they have internet access. So they don't have to bother you on an emergency basis to get copies of the tax returns. They can do that themselves. You can put projects on extension, you can put projects on hold, and you can delete projects. Now, deleted projects are never really gone in Clarity. You can always call them back and reactivate them. However, clients cannot see deleted projects. Down at the bottom, we have recurring projects. These are projects that you want to happen more than once. And I think that's how I'm going to actually create this project for Daddy Shark. What I want to do is create an S Corporation return for Daddy Shark. So I'm going to go down here and say create recurring project from template. I'm going to pick the template, and we use templates internally as being staff teams. So I'll go down and I will find an S Corp return, Frank and Christy. I will pick me as the person in charge. I will put in a project description. Oops, I think I want to start out with S Corporation. the priority. Then how often do I want this project to recur? This is a corporate tax return, so we're doing it once a year. When do I want that project to show up each year? Or I'm going to say February 1st. So this project doesn't just sit out there, out into the future. It literally will appear next year on February 1. When do I want to start the recurring process? Today. Do I want this to be an active project? Yes. And do I want to create this year's project now? Yes. So I hit schedule recurring. And just that quickly, I have a project that is ready to go and ready to get started. It doesn't make any sense if you have a tax return that's going to last for 2 hours to spend 15 minutes setting up a project. In Clarity, as you can see, it takes about 10 seconds to get it done, maybe faster. So let's talk about the different tabs that are on a project. First of all, we have the project info tab, and I'm going to put in the year for this tax return. Then we have project type. Project type is very important. Once you have assigned a project type to a project, you cannot change the project type. You have to delete the project and create a new one. The reason for that is that project type defines a whole set of parameters for a project. It defines the workflow steps, questions and answer templates that I haven't gotten to yet that I will show you, and it defines the post-engagement checklist. So these things are all set once you've picked a project type. You can see we have 4 positions for the project. We have priority. We have the status. Talk about status a little more in a few minutes. Status is what the client sees on their end instead of seeing the detailed workflow steps. Project state is our active, not started, completed, extended, so forth. Delivery method is user definable. Filing method is user definable. We have 5 dates over on the right. The first 2 are done by the system and you do not have a way of changing them. The status date is going to be today. The creation date is the date the project was created. The assigned date you can modify, and this is the date typically that you're going to send it to a preparer. And you can change this date. Project due date, this is typically the due date of the tax return. And then expected delivery date, this is when you expect the return to be done. It's a target date. This is a date that also the clients don't see. So I'm going to hit the update button to save my change to the name. The next folder tab is workflow steps. These are all of the detailed steps that this particular project type, S Corporation tax return, will go through from beginning to end. You can see that by using my template, all of these steps were assigned to staff members already. These steps or workflow steps for preparation are entirely customizable by you. When you sign up for Clarity Practice Management, we give you a basic set of project types that have workflow steps in them. But you can modify errors, you can delete them, you can add new project types, you can delete project types, you can do whatever you want. I typically recommend during your trial period that you get used to the projects that we've given you a little bit, and then that'll help you figure out what sort of modifications you'd like to make going forward to the project types. Status is what the client sees when they log into Clarity for a project. You determine how these statuses are mapped to the individual workflow steps. For instance, questions 1 stage, clients will see awaiting answers. That means we're waiting on them to give us answers. Need e-file papers, they will see need authorization on their side. Okay, you can see the staff that are assigned. This is from a drop-down list, so you can pick any of your staff members for that. Due dates. Due dates are defined when you create a project type as a number of days between each step. You can see right now all of these say January. But when I change the assigned date, I can then change all of the due dates by going down here to reset workflow to project assigned date. And just like that, we are reset to the assigned date, and then all the dates roll forward. The way handoffs occur from task to task is clicking on the completion date. That moves it forward to the next step. Estimated hours. These are also assigned as a number of hours or a fractional number to each one of the workflow steps. If you remember back on the corporate dashboard, we had the workload column. This is where that comes from. This adds up for any individual staff member all of the estimated hours for all the tasks they are assigned on out into the future. Email notifications. This is part of the heart of Clarity's system for getting you out of emails and phone calls. At any workflow step, you can elect to send an email notification to a client. For instance, we send them a notification when we send them a questions list. We send them a notification here when we post a draft tax return. And at the end, we send them a notification when the return has been completed and the IRS accepts it. All of that can be done on an automated basis. These notifications are also customizable by you. And again, if you sign up for Clarity, either subscribe or sign up for a trial, we give you a base set of these notifications so that you can get used to them a little bit. And then you can modify them to your heart's content. Q&A. You will ask questions of clients on Clarity, and they will answer the questions on Clarity. The way you create a questionnaire, and you can have as many questionnaires as you want for a client or for a project, hit new questionnaire. First round of questions. You can elect to send a reminder email if they have not answered the questions, and these time periods are user definable. In our case, we have a grace period of 5 days, and then they get a reminder then and every 5 days after that. I like to call this our auto nag feature. We have a place for client notes. And normally I put something a little personal in there. Internal notes are notes between staff members. Typically a preparer might leave a note for the person who's going to approve and send the questions. And again, this is something that they want to make the person reviewing the questionnaire aware of. Now, there are two ways to add questions to a questions list. The first one is add custom question, and here we just type out the question. Hit add to list, becomes part of the questions list. The other way to get questions is to add questions from the template. And when I click on that, I get a list of all the questions that are part of the template for this project type. And this is a list of questions you can set up. That way you can standardize across your firm how questions get asked, the exact wording. And it's as simple as I want to pick that one, want to pick that one, so forth, and then I hit add to list. Now that I have the questions in the list, I can first of all edit the questions. And update. If there's a question I would like to delete, I can hit the little trash can icon and it's gone. If I don't like the order of the questions, I can drag and drop them in a different order. And at any point in this process, I can save the questions and come back to them later. However, when I have the questions finished, I hit the send button. And now Daddy Shark gets an email notification that there are questions, as well as a notification on his dashboard in Clarity. So you think you can see questions are really easy to set up, and it's really great to get everything in writing right in one place on the site. Internal files. These are files for your internal work papers. You can keep any of the work papers that you want for a particular project, and it's very simple. You just drag and drop the ones you want, and I'm going to grab some, drag them over. These don't necessarily make any sense for internal work papers, but if you want to preserve the file, you put a click in the box. A file that is preserved stays on Clarity basically forever once the project is completed. If you do not preserve a file, the files get basically peeled away from the project after a number of days, and that number of days is defined by you under the admin section. So I hit save, and these files become part of the internal files tab. Files from the firm. If you sign up for Clarity, this will not say SK CPAs. It'll be a short version of your firm. Drag and drop works the same way. If I'm dragging, though, for instance, something a little different, like a draft tax return, if I click on the need approval, this is what gives Daddy Shark the option of approving or disapproving a draft. This is where we deliver practically all of our tax returns. In fact, next tax season, we're going to start charging for paper returns because it's a different workflow. We happen to know it takes us about 8 minutes to deliver a return on Clarity. We know it takes about 20 minutes to deliver one via paper. So the way this works is that you pick the files that you want for the tax return, the final ones, drag them over. And typically, if these are the final tax return files, you are going to preserve them because you want the client to have access to these for as long as they're a client, basically. Then, if you have a note template, and I'm just going to grab that one, that has instructions pre-stored, you could put it in there and send the note. That's how easy it is to deliver a tax return using Clarity. Files from client, these are files that clients post for you, and it's drag and drop on their end as well. I mentioned that we had about 85% of all our clients post their files here last year. It's not just individual tax documents that can be posted. You can have clients post QuickBooks backups, Sage 50 backups. There's no hard and fast file limit on what can be posted. It really depends on how long the client's internet connection will stay up before it times out. But we don't put a limit on it. Engagement letter. You can post an engagement letter for a client a number of different ways, one of which is you can drag and drop it in there. The other way is that you can pre-store engagement letters in Clarity and select from them. When the client returns the engagement letter to you, you can check off that you got it. I mentioned earlier that you can post invoices to Clarity. That is also drag and drop. It's as simple as pulling the invoice over, putting in the dollar amount, hitting save. And now on the client side, Daddy Shark will have the ability to pay by credit card directly on the site. Review notes. Review notes are communications from the reviewer to the preparer about items that need to be considered or changed. The way this works is type in the note. Classify it, and as I mentioned earlier, the classifications are up to you. And they don't even have to be criticisms. They can be nice things. Checklist. If you have a post-engagement checklist, you can have the preparer completed here. To do that, I am going to go back and show you. I don't have a post-engagement checklist for that. I'm going to go back to that individual return, because I know there is one there. So I will go into the individual tax return we looked at the very beginning. And I will go to checklist. And again, these checklists are specific to a project type and they are customizable by you. The way the checklist works is as the preparer is working or reviewing, they get down the checklist, check off the items. If it does not apply, they toggle off the applicable button. So no more PDF checklists, no more paper checklists. You can build all that into Clarity. Email history. I've mentioned a number of times about email notifications going out to the client. Once in a while, a client will get one and say, I really have no idea what that meant. Can you tell me what that meant? Well, you can come back here and see just what email notification went out. You can see that they got it. You can see when it went out. But even more important, you can click on the body envelope and you can see what the notification said. So you can let them know, hey, I uploaded an invoice, please go pay it. Or whatever that particular email notification was. Finally, we have time tracking in Clarity. The way it works is you can enter time. You can see I have a timer coming down here. You can set it up so that a timer starts automatically when you open a project, or you can manually start the timer for a project, or you can add a manual entry for a project. That accumulates all of the time entries on a particular project. Only people with management access can see the cost, the billing, and the profit for obvious reasons. Other staff members who are assigned to a particular project can see the hours and the people. So that's pretty much everything that is in a project. We have a little bit of time left. What I'd like to do is hop over to the client side and show you what clients see. So I'm going to drop that down. I'm going to open up a Chrome window. And the way clients will log in to Clarity is from your website. So you will put a button somewhere on your website. Ours is up in the upper right. We call it Client Center. You can call it whatever you would like to call it. They will access it using their email address. Put in a password. If they forget their password, they can have it sent to them. And when I click Login, I mentioned a little bit earlier that one email address can access more than one client. This is how that works. Note this little thing up in the right here. You can also set notifications for clients or staff. And in this case, we have a notification running that says we're heads down working on tax returns to meet the deadline. Please wait till after July 15th for other issues. So you can communicate with all of your clients on this at one time. So I'm going to go into the Daddy Shark client. You can see here we have navigations on the left, but it's cut down greatly for clients. Have a section of notifications for clients. Typically, they won't have anywhere near this number of notifications. This is my demo client, so they tend to accumulate here. If I scroll down, you can see what projects are active, or the client can. They can see the completed projects, which is where they'll go to get their old tax returns. On the client side, it's really easy. They really don't even have to navigate much on the left side. For instance, if they want to go to the invoice, they just click on it. And it's taking them to the project and the exact folder tab they need to be at. Then if they want to pay the invoice, which is my favorite part, they click on it, pay my selected fees, and it hands it off to your credit card processor. We don't store any of the information on Clarity. For instance, if we posted a note for a client, they can go to the note and they can see it down here in the notes. Here's where they can see the files that we've posted. Here's where they post files. Here's where they answer questions. They click on it. And I'm going to leave one of these questions intentionally blank. They can save the question answers at any point and come back, but when they're done, they can hit the submit button, and that's when you get a notification, as does the staff on that particular project. So I'm going to leave this question blank and hit submit. What they get next is a notification that says, okay, you haven't answered all the questions. Do you still want to submit them, or do you want to return to the questions and complete them? We don't want to frustrate them, so we let them submit. And I think that's about what I want to show you about what we've got time for.